The UN estimates that by 2050 there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish.
It's estimated that 100 million tons of plastic are generated globally each year.
Local authorities have been forced to close beaches due to mounds of plastic rubbish.
Hello, I'm Tammy Ven Dange, an executive turned social entrepreneur. It's clear that Mother Nature has a plastics problem, but I think it's time to quit talking about the problem. Instead, let's talk about the solutions. This is a business podcast with an environmental mission. And as your host of the Plastics Revolution, I'm going to chat with the innovators, change makers, and fellow entrepreneurs who are leading the way in fighting plastic waste. Along the way, we'll also share tips and practical ideas so that you too can be part of the solution. This is the Plastics Revolution. In this episode of Plastics Revolution, I chat with Samantha Cross of Plastic Police. Samantha spent most of her career helping companies reduce their waste as an employee of Brambles. Then a few years ago, a combination of circumstances led her to start her own consulting company and a passion project she called Plastic Police to tackle soft plastic waste specifically. What started as a shipping container in one school has now evolved to a fully tested model with a scalable blueprint for businesses and organizations alike. We hope you enjoy this episode of Plastics Revolution with Samantha Cross of Plastic Police. Samantha, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tammy. It's great to be here.
Now, before we go into the details of Plastic Police and your Cross Connections consulting company, I have a personal question to ask. I've read somewhere that your first job was as a truck driver. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, that is correct. And it's probably something that I tell lots of people. It's the foundation, provided the foundation for what I'm doing today. So I was the first female employed in Brambles, Australia at their Hunter Region depot in Newcastle, and I joined a workforce of 300 men, and it was fantastic. Straight out of high school and lots of fun.
And what did you do as a driver?
I was part of a really innovative management trainee course. So it was the first of its kind, and it was a 6-year trainee course, and the first 3 years was really hands-on. We actually spent years driving trucks, cranes, forklifts, front-end loaders, and we ended up getting every licence you could think of. But the whole reason behind that traineeship was to bring through managers that actually knew the business from the ground up. So it was really quite innovative at the time, and we were able to learn a lot. It was hands-on, as you could imagine, and lots of interesting, funny stories along the way.
Well, if I need a bunch of pallets moved, I'll give you a ring. So Samantha, Brambles, a lot of people may not be familiar with the company. What exactly do they do?
So Brambles was a service-based company, and it had a lot of different divisions within the Brambles Australia, and one of those divisions was actually Cleanaway. So as we know, Cleanaway is one of the largest waste management companies in Australia today, and I had the opportunity in 2012 to move from the industrial services division of Brambles over to the Cleanaway division. And work with, a number of large organisations implementing better ways to manage waste.
Was this something that you'd always inspired to do, to work in this kind of waste management field? Is that how you got involved?
Look, I probably have been practicing circular economy principles since the late 1990s, to be honest, Tammy. When I was in the industrial services part of the business, we used to manage contracts that would require us to look at innovative ways to reduce our clients' costs. And by doing so, we were able to win new contracts and renew contracts. And I went into businesses and really looked at, we were managing the waste at the time, but looking at ways, well, where was this waste coming from? So I was actually able to work on a number of projects where we actually went back to where the waste was produced in the manufacturing process and looked at better ways to reduce that waste. So it might have been a change in a process, or even, and I'll use an example from the steel mill, we actually separated different types of waste streams so they could be redirected to different applications. And one of them was, say, a mill scale, which could be turned into a welding flux. So that's just one example, but there were lots of opportunities to look at byproducts. So I guess starting with byproducts has led me to look at different streams.
And so when did the light bulb go off that you thought, I'm doing this within other companies. I think I could just focus on one thing, working for myself?
Look, it was probably in 2014, Tammy. I was actually seconded within the Cleanaway business to work with Unilever down at the Shepparton site in Victoria. And I've been really, I guess, working in the business trying to create the role that I knew would be the direction for the future in the circular economy space. And when I was seconded to assist this, their goal at that time was to be the first manufacturing site in Australia to actually achieve that zero waste to landfill. And they'd had that target for a little while. I went down and put in place the strategy that would actually allow them to achieve that target. And that strategy, the whole basis was all around collaboration, working with other people, connecting. So really I was just the conduit to bring all these people together to get that zero waste to landfill outcome. And I think that was the time I first made contact with David Hodge, actually from Plastic Forest back in 2014, who I know you've interviewed on your show before, and lots of others. So I had a lot of industry connections, and it was just about finding the answers were out there. A lot of people just didn't know where to look. So I think that's, the philosophy that I've always had was the ability to connect people to come up with solutions.
And so from that Unilever experience, you decided to start Cross Connections Consulting. Is that right?
Yes, there were a couple of reasons, Tammy. In the lead up to starting a consulting business, I wanted to have the opportunity to have a greater impact. So at the time I was actually helping an organisation of 6,000 people to find solutions for waste, and had actually just completed a mentoring course where I was both a mentee and then I became a mentor for up-and-coming leaders within the Cleanaway business. And at the same time, I actually was made redundant. So I think, the stars aligned. I had also at the same time I was in hospital as well. And so I actually started Cross Connection from the hospital bed.
Oh my goodness.
And the day after I was made redundant. So I think I've always had a yes attitude, and I think, obviously opportunities like this, it had been 22 years and I probably wouldn't have, had the courage at that time to actually start my own business. So I think things happen for a reason, and since 2014 I've been able to expand my reach in terms of helping businesses participate in the circular economy, and also mentor a lot of other leaders and start a passion project, which was Plastic Police.
Well, let's go into that a little bit more then. So you've dealt with so many different waste streams. Why did you choose plastic?
Well, back in 2015, I had just completed some renovations at home. So my husband and I were tackling a few projects, and we went out and we bought some furniture which arrived wrapped in plastic. And as I was unpacking all this plastic, I thought, well, look, I know that wrap and films are readily recyclable at the time. Like, there was a market for film. Once it was collected, it was shipped overseas for reprocessing. But I was actually at the time thinking, well, look, the easy option for me would be just to take it into my network of contacts and get it recycled. But I actually put my hat on. I'm a mother of 3 daughters. I actually, part of a community, and if it wasn't easy for me to recycle as a mother, as a community member, then I know, it wouldn't be easy for other people. So it also coincided with the release of the New South Wales EPA community benchmark studies, which showed back in 2015 that 60% of soft plastic packaging was actually landfilled.
Yeah.
The 34% was incorrectly placed in the recycling bin, and 2% was only being dropped off at the store at the time. So there was simply, an issue with soft plastic in that it wasn't being collected at curbside. There weren't a lot of opportunities to actually recycle that for SME businesses, for school communities, and not a lot of people knew about the Red Cycle program at the time either. And I think, the other issue is that we've just simply got too much soft plastic, and it is clogging our landfills.
Yes. So you decided to do something specifically around plastic.
I did. My first port of call at the time, I was chairing the local Waste Management Association of Australia, the Hunter Regional Working Group. So I had contacts, obviously, in all the waste management companies. So I went along with a bag of plastic that I'd collected and said, look, I've got an idea. Who'd like to be involved? And not surprisingly, I didn't get any takers. There wasn't a lot of value in plastic at that time. And I actually, so not, I wasn't going to be put off by that. So I actually went out and bought a shipping container and approached my local school where my children attended at the time, and put it to them that we could run a short trial. I imagine that trial would go for a year, and at the end of that trial period, we would collect the plastic, and then I would present back to them a piece of furniture made out of the plastic that had been collected to close the loop on what our school was collecting.
So was this a funded project, or was this just a passion project?
This was a passion project. This was Samantha giving back to her local community, and really at that time, it was a little bit about landfill diversion, because I didn't want this material ending up in landfills, nor did I want it ending up as litter. So in 2015, that trial kicked off. By the end of 2016, we had collected over 1,000 kilo of soft plastics from that one school community.
Wow.
And at the time, I'd also been working, so going back from when I had done projects looking for solutions for Unilever, I was coming across a lot of technologies that were emerging. So we actually got that plastic, and I used a whole range of, innovative cost-saving initiatives such as reverse logistics and sending plastic on the back of a truck that was already heading down to Echuca to actually get this material turned into a bench seat. And, I've got photos still of the days that my husband and I drove down with the trailer. We loaded up the bench seat to bring it back. So very much funded at that time by the school community, but really we were getting the volunteers. There wasn't a lot of, apart from the shipping container and some necessary equipment that we trialled during that trial, we actually it was pretty much on a smell of an oily rag.
Well, did you already have intentions of doing something greater when you started this, or was it literally just, I just want to see what we can do, and you didn't even have a plan, you just kind of just took one step at a time?
It was basically taking one step at a time. I just wanted to do something local in my community to make a difference. And when the trial finished, I actually always knew that I wanted to turn it into a product, because I guess I saw the writing on the wall. So we'd already had the green fence in 2013, 14, and then, obviously there's been a long period where we know what eventually accumulated in the bans or the imports, China bans. That was always the direction I think it was headed. And so back in 2015, I really wanted to show that we could actually turn it into something. And also, I guess the overall goal I had was to show that, the easy option is to lift your bin and put it in, but that's not the best option. And that's not necessarily the right option. So I wanted to actually help communities not only take it away from landfill, but also start to realise the amount of packaging that we do use, and are there other ways to reduce this packaging waste? Because at the end of the day, we still have to find markets for this material.
So 1,000 kilos of soft plastic is a lot of soft plastic. Most people realize how light it is. Did you already have a manufacturing partner lined up to do this work when you decided to buy the shipping container at the very beginning?
Yes, we had New Tech Poly, so they were trialling a melter, and I'd actually provided some early samples for their technology. They were based in Moama, and at that time they were obviously melting and extruding planks. So this type of plastic being very multi-layered and very not homogeneous in its composition, it's really only suitable for that point in time for larger outdoor furniture, and so we worked with them, and the first bench seat that they produced was for Plastic Police, and it's still standing proudly at Bidaba Public School, which is the school that first participated.
I saw pictures of that bench, and it's quite a large bench, and it does look like it was made out of kind of a plastic plank. Yes,
you can tell it's made out of recycled plastic, and I think that's part of the appeal for the children in the school. They can actually see what their efforts have gone into producing, and from that one trial we started getting inquiries from across the Hunter region, which is Newcastle and Central Coast.
Now, I understand, though, that this wasn't just a, collection program. It seems like there was a significant education component behind it, too. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Well, Plastic Police is committed to educating and empowering organisations and communities to implement circular economy solutions. So we've always maintained it's not just a recycling program, because at the end of the day, if we're not buying back products, then we really don't have a sustainable recycling solution. So we started by actually engaging the school community around what are soft plastics. And it's interesting, a lot of people, are confused by exactly what is a soft plastic and what could be recycled. So to start off with, there might have been some trays from biscuits and some other things. So soft plastic, for your listeners, is those materials that can readily be scrunched in your hand. Uh-huh. And if you think about a packet of Tim Tams, the outer packaging is the soft plastic, yet the tray in which the biscuits sit is the more rigid plastic that can traditionally get recycled through your curbside recycling bin. So we were definitely focused on the soft plastics, and through the trial, we were actually able to look at how we engaged the school community, but also what sort of equipment was needed to capture this to minimise contamination. So we've used a variety of methods over the time, and also locations where you place the bag stand. So we use a bag stand with a clear bag, and that actually allows material to be placed in. It stops it from being windblown from litter. So we get the community to bring the soft plastics in, place it in the bag stand, and then that is then collected at the time of the trial. We actually use the shipping container, and that was really good to actually collect and aggregate all the material, because then we did some more investigations as to what types of plastics were coming through, and if we saw a lot of single-use shopping bags, well, there's an education piece in terms of how you can reduce or replace single-use shopping bags with things like boomerang bags or just other reusable bags. So I think that was sort of the eye-opener for a lot of people, is they just didn't realise how much plastic they were actually sending to landfill, or let alone just actually using.
Yeah. So for those listeners who aren't familiar with Tim Tams, you're missing out on a very amazing Australian cookie.
They definitely are my favourites.
But that's what we were just talking about earlier. Samantha, it's one thing to say you're going to do a passion project just once, but once you had more people interested in this, and communities and schools and such, passion projects can quickly take up all your time and bring in no cash. And most of us still need to make a living. So how did you then turn it into something that could be more sustainable?
Well, Tammy, as you have alluded to, I do consult as well, and I guess the consulting business has given me some of the necessary funds and flexibility to develop and test the model. So once we had finished the trial, I announced to the school community that the trial had finished, and that there was community outrage. The reason being was they didn't want to stop it. They'd been so engaged. So from that point on, I knew it was bigger than me, and I knew it was bigger than the school community. There was a need, and I was prepared to actually take it to the next level. And I think, I have to give some credit to my very supportive husband, who obviously has owned businesses before, and there was a period of time I'd been the breadwinner in the family, and so we were prepared to invest that time to see where we could take Plastic Police and what it could become. So from 2016, late 2016-17, we started to expand the trial to include some additional schools, but also some councils and businesses, because we thought, well, we've tested it in a school environment. We know that works. It's very difficult to get funding, so there was only a certain amount of testing I could do on the funds I had at the time.
Yeah.
I again approached my network of waste management companies, and we had one come on board that was in the Hunter region, Ramonda. So I'll give a shout out to them, because they actually said, look, we'll be involved and provide some collections for the next stage of your project. So we were very lucky to have a number of large organisations and councils in the Hunter region that actually came on board. And at that time, we were able to start charging a participation fee to cover some of the costs of being involved in the project. So it's turned into become, partly a funded model by the participants, but also I was still providing a lot of in-kind support to actually test and prove that the different elements all work together. So essentially over the last 4 years, we've tested the education engagement aspects of it, the collection. So when we talk about collection, how the material gets from point A to B, and we know that logistics in any recycling is a huge cost, and there's a lot that goes into logistics, but I put my lucky trucky transport background hat on and really set about to test some different models. So we've, over the years, we've actually had lots of exciting projects that we've worked with organisations. We've tested, applications where we could use a baler. We've tested some different stands, some bags, and I think that's all part of the learning that we get to share with others now. And then after that, it was about reprocessing. So obviously there's only so many bench seats you could make out of this material. And I knew that there needed to be some more opportunities to redirect this plastic if it was to become a program that could grow and become sustainable and viable in the long term. So certainly we had, people from all over the region ringing up to say, we'd love to be involved. Can we be involved? Can we start? And we actually put the brakes on bringing anyone new on board because that just wasn't feasible at the time. And I didn't want to commit to collecting any plastic that I actually couldn't find a home for. So we actually were involved with providing the first lot of plastic to close the loop for their lab scale testing when they started developing their toner plas. And again, I used reverse logistics to get that first load from the schools down to close the loop on the back of a truck that was carrying a pull down at the same time. So, so it was, I guess we were on a shoestring in that respect, but we looked at all the ways that we could, test the model and expand and get that interest. And I guess the last part of what we tested over those last 4 years was the buying back. So we had a couple of councils involved. We had some infrastructure companies involved, and we also had the University of Newcastle involved. And we've actually been able to help those organisations actually understand the role they play in being part of a solution that tackles the issue of soft plastic waste. So, we've University of Newcastle have purchased a lot of Replas products for the first time, and they didn't actually know about Replas. So I've really been that conduit of educating people and engaging them and connecting them to the likes of Plastic Forest, Replas, Close the Loop Downer, and I think it's really, that's going to help pull through this additional material.
There's a business case to be made too, and I think I read about it in some of the other materials I've seen as I was doing research, and that's about the cost of disposing it through a normal landfill rate. You talk about making it sustainable. You talked about the buyback program. How often do you have to talk about the fact that they could be saving money if they think about these alternative ways of reducing their plastic waste? Or is it merely this is really a corporate responsibility and therefore companies want to be a part of that?
Look, Tammy, very good question, because as you know, often the first question many people are asked is, how much does it cost?
Yes.
And as we were trialling this program, we had people that say, we want to give you our plastics. And I said, that's lovely. There is too much plastic out there. And we really were looking for the right people to partner with to prove the success of the model. And those are the people, the infrastructure, the councils, the organisations that are actually committed to buying back. And so we specifically, have encouraged and targeted people that do have that capacity. And if someone rings up and says, I want to recycle my plastic, how much does it cost? They're probably not our target at this point in time, because we were doing a lot of face-to-face education engagement. So the people that were actually coming on board are the ones that actually saw more than it being just a recycling program. It was actually a community and staff engagement program. So, we've worked with a number of organisations and they get all their staff involved. We have lunch and learn sessions. They're coming up with ideas for new products. So it's not it's not seen as a recycling program or a waste management program. It's actually, a behaviour change community engagement program that ticks the boxes for a number of our participants in the SDG space, so Sustainable Development Goals, which there's some links that can be placed up there around, responsible resource consumption and, more sustainable cities. So when we think about putting, Reconifeld asphalt down on the road, these are roads that are lasting longer and, it's really, fit for purpose in that respect. So I think there's lots of opportunities to engage, there's more awareness in organisations of, I guess that responsibility. But at the end of the day, there are ways to, reduce certainly landfill disposal costs and collection costs, but there is a cost to recycle materials at this point in time.
Sure.
And particularly when we're transporting it, there's not the local infrastructure processing capacities locally. So a lot of the reprocessors at this stage are in Victoria or are in Sydney. So there's that cost of transport that needs to be taken into account as well.
You mentioned some of our previous guests from mostly manufacturers like Replus and Plastic Forest, and then also Close the Loop, who takes the toner cartridges and turns it into various things. And also, you did also mention Downer's project with Close the Loop on, what do you call it, Recofalt?
Reconifelt?
Reconifelt,
Yeah.
that's how you pronounce
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And that's the newest asphalt or pavement mix that they've created that seems to be doing really good in all the trials and projects that they've done that has a component of plastic in it. When I talk to all these manufacturers that you've mentioned, though, every one of them tells me they have capacity. This is not a problem for them to make more products out of recycled plastic. They have nailed down the technology to do so. What they don't have as customers on the other end of it. How do we change that? Like, how is your organizations helping with trying to create that demand, not just feel good because you gave us some plastic that is going to cost us money to process, but at the end of the day, someone has to buy these products.
That's definitely right. And when it comes to better managing soft plastics, there's two important actions that we can take. Firstly, we've got to reduce our soft plastic waste. And secondly, we've got to buy recycled products. And that opportunity is now. So it's raising that awareness because a lot of people aren't aware that these products exist. So through our case studies, through our pilot, we've actually developed quite a range of tools and examples which, if someone was starting, how do I get involved in the circular economy, then this is where we see Plastic Police being able to add the most value. So, we're actually educating and empowering them now through showing organisations actually actively doing this. And we've got councils that are pouring roads, and one local council that we've been working with, Central Coast Council, on the, in between Sydney and Newcastle, for those of your listeners that might not be aware. When they posted that on their social media, it was the most liked, interacted post that they'd had at the time. So I think there is community interest. Certainly, all the war on waste that we've had, a number of documentaries over the last couple of years. You've got your plastic oceans. People are certainly more aware, and I think there's more pressure. But I think at the end of the day, we have the infrastructure that can process materials. We just have to help create that pool. And that's what we're really doing, getting people to start specifying it in their contracts or in their procurement. So we've got, one organisation that, when they go out now, they'll specify certain recycled, content products in their specifications. So I think it's about understanding who in the organisation makes those decisions and engaging them in the process. And that's what Plastic Police has done. We just haven't gone in and spoken to the person responsible for the recycling in the organisation. We go in and we engage with everyone in the organisation because we really think everyone has a role to play to actually implement those circular solutions.
There's a quote I read about the Plastic Police programs that said, it's the most effective sustainability program in terms of behavior change ever implemented within the organization. And I think that really, to me, was a huge standout between the kind of work that you're doing and the kind of work that other organizations are doing that are more collection focused, is this behavioral change. You've done 4 years now of work in this space. What's Plastic Police doing now?
Well, we're currently working on something very exciting, which will allow us to scale. So having tested all the various elements that are needed to make this whole program work, so from education engagement, collection, reprocessing and closing the loop, we're actually going to focus on those two key areas about helping people to reduce soft plastic waste and secondly, buying back recycled products. And as in terms of, assisting and being able to scale that solution, I have a small team that delivers Plastic Police. We get calls from all over Australia. As we are a collaboration program, we really want to give people the tools to go and implement it this program themselves and really put their stamp on it. And if they, they want to own this program. And in that respect, we are actually going to develop a blueprint. It's called the Plastic Police Blueprint, which really shares our learnings over the last 5 years. That then, we get the questions, where do I start? What do I do? And we want to share that learning, because when I first started, it was trial and error. Everyone else doesn't have to go through the pain and the no's and the yeses that we had to, to get where we are today. So the blueprint will enable organisations to access a step-by-step guide and resources and all the tools needed to implement an effective soft plastic recycling and reduction program, but also give them the know-how of, what their role is and how they can close the loop.
So does that mean that it'll give them access to all the manufacturers about that can process that plastic and turn it into something?
Yes, the program's always been about transparency, and I think at the end of the day, where we add the most value is definitely on the education engagement side, and the repurchasing back, educating people about what they can repurchase back. So the collections, a lot of our participants have existing waste contracts and they want to tap into those waste contracts, or they don't want to introduce another waste collector to site. So if we've got the blueprint, that will actually help them have those conversations with their collectors, because they'll be more informed about what the opportunities are for soft plastics. And certainly, we have some great opportunities to obviously through store drop-off. There's existing opportunities through the recycle program at Coles and Woolworths for post-consumers to drop off materials. But there's also opportunities for more businesses to actually, separate out plastics that can be readily recycled, as opposed to those that, maybe the market or the financials aren't there yet to actually, recycled some of plastics in particular areas.
Exciting times. So when will you know about that rollout, or are you waiting for some sort of information before you could start that program?
Look, we have had some funding support from the New South Wales EPA to originally deliver the regional project up in the Hunter region, and that's allowed us to progress this to the next level. So we are obviously looking at some support to further develop the platform and the model, and to roll that out across New South Wales and Australia. So it's pretty exciting times, and I'd like obviously work with my colleague Lexi, who's been an integral part of the Plastic Police business since 2018. So she's certainly very excited, because Lexi actually, is first focusing on a lot of the education and the engagement initiatives that we are delivering. So I think, there's a great opportunity to share what we've been able to develop with a wider audience. And we've certainly got lots of interest for this blueprint.
If people want to know more about it, where should they go to look into that information?
So for more information, people can visit our website at www.plasticpolice.com.au, or follow us on our Facebook and Instagram social media.
Okay, we'll make sure we put that information in the show notes. Samantha, what kind of advice would you give to our listeners to reduce plastic waste, especially soft plastic?
I think understanding what type of soft plastic you're introducing or generating within your own organisation is a good starting point. So in terms of, working with your suppliers, looking at what sort of packaging is coming in, and I take the example of, someone that's purchasing bubble wrap, for example, to actually, repackage products and send that out to their customers. There are other alternatives, such as the perforated cardboard, and we've got a case study on that. And that's a really great example of where, an organisation can save costs and do something that's better for the environment.
Okay, so anything else you want to share with our audience, Samantha?
Yes, look, everyone has the opportunity to challenge the status quo. So I think if you are actually wanting to make a change, we all have a role to play, and within your own organisation or your own community, there's lots of different ways that you can get involved. But the courage in your organisation to buy back recycled products, or looking at how, if you're involved in manufacturing, how you can redesign your own products to design out waste and reduce and reuse soft plastics, then I think that's a really good starting place.
Well, Samantha, I just wanted to thank you for your time today. Your passion is so obvious in the work that you've done. The fact that you've continued to support Plastic Police through your consulting business so that you can get this project off the runway, basically, and to not only create these circular economies, but to educate people to reduce their plastic waste, and that includes businesses and schools, and to actually demonstrate where this plastic could go to rather than landfill, is such an important educational and awareness opportunity that very few people would take it on their shoulders to do. So thank you for the work that you're doing. We're really excited about the new blueprint that you're about to put out, and we'll have a look at that, and we'd love to share it with our audience too.
Thanks, Tammy. It's been a journey and one that continues, and I'd just like to, shout out to all the people in, we are a tribe of amazing individuals, and I think I'm really supportive of the work you're doing to capture everyone's stories and to share, because from everyone else we can learn, and I think, we're all in this together, and I'd like to just say well done on such a fantastic podcast initiative.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks, Samantha.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks for joining me for this episode. To see the links and show notes, check out plasticsrevolution.com. And if you found anything interesting or helpful at all, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the show and to tell others. Stay tuned next week as I chat to another innovator, changemaker, or fellow entrepreneur who's leading the plastics revolution. This is Tammy Ven Dange. Be kind to animals and Mother Nature. This show is produced by Johnny Pushkus. Music by Joseph McDad.